also made it to Andrew Divoff's Q&A panel, the guy who played in Toy Soldiers and the Wishmaster series. He's actually a very interesting person, being so versatile in many languages and even having his own brewery. But just hearing how he became an actor and even how he developed the voice for the Djinn in the Wishmaster series is so perplexing.
Wow, thank you for the silence. That'll make this a great panel for me. Anyways, let's go. Okay, Andrew Divoff is an actor of TV and film, voice actor, producer, and stuntman. Best known for playing the evil Djinn in the first two Wishmaster films, the villains Cherry Gans in Another 48 Hours, Ernesto Mendoza in A Low Down Dirty Shame, Boris Bieslev in Air Force One, Louis Cali in the Toy Soldiers,
Yeah.
and Mikhail Bakunin. Yes, I did it right. On Lost. Let's give them a warm welcome again, guys. Andrew. So, I'm going to start off with the basic of questions. What got you into acting? And was it always something you wanted to do as a kid? Did you have any influences, any idols to look forward to?
So I grew up in Venezuela. I was born in Venezuela of an Irish mother, Russian pop, and I like to say I don't drink, I have no sense of humor, and I don't read poetry. But that's a lie. So as a kid, I was very introverted, very shy, but I always kind of knew that there was a little bit of a show off inside. So I kind of came to the bug or to the idea of acting, I suppose for me in my life, in my cycle, it was a bit late. So in my sort of late teens, as it happened, fast forward now to, this would have been 1982. My pop retired. He had headed up Goodyear in Venezuela. Retired and moved up to California and moved out to Malibu. I was at school at that time. I was out east. And he said, so I'm moving to California in the summer. Would you like to come help me? And to me that sounded like, would you like to come crash on my couch in Malibu? And I said, absolutely. So I came out and I decided to take a bit of a hiatus from school. I was driving a limousine, and at that time I thought, well, I just, the mind keeps going when we try to rest, so I decided I had to fill the time with something to do, and I thought, well, should I dare, and should I go into a class? So I went into a class. It was a cold reading class. Teaches you how to go into a casting office and convince them that you know what you're doing. So I was lucky enough to start out with really small jobs and sort of keep it going. Do any of you remember a show called 30-something? It was a television show. So at that time, I had an agent that nobody would talk to or take a phone call from. But I remember that agent told me that there was a role for a limo driver, and a Russian limo driver in the show. And I thought, but he said to me, they won't take my call. I said, no worries. So I drove to the casting office with a card, one of my cards that had the limousine company name on it and so forth. And I went in and I didn't tell them that I wasn't Russian, so I went in with my accent. And they were looking at me like, oh my God, this is so perfect. And I'm thinking, okay, so do I have the job? And it was cool, I got the job. And if many of you may not remember the episode, but it basically, my scene took place in the rearview mirror. So it was being filmed from the back seat, the eyes were in the mirror. And there, I'll never forget, there was this one guy on the crew who I think he had a Russian grandma, and he kept going by me, and he had absolutely no shame about telling me, that's the worst fucking Russian accent I ever heard. Oh man, they're gonna bust me. So I kept in character until the end of the show. And I remember a couple of the actresses coming up and saying, introducing a friend, oh, this is that Russian actor. And I'm thinking, oh my, because I had written a card, a thank you card, and I handed it to her, and in perfect English, I said, thank you so much for being so cool. And she just looked at me like I cut her heart out. And needless to say, I never came back as the limo driver. But it was nice, and it proved to me that if you go after something, if you want something badly enough, you'll get it. So, it may take a little bit of time. Some of you may be wondering why I'm chewing on this candy. You may know that the Wishmaster, in order to get that gurgly voice, I need sugar, I need whey, because as it turned out, I learned the hard way that eating with a full prosthetic mask on, and then having to go to the makeup trailer and have them fish out crumbs of food from between the mask and your face, not the most elegant thing. So I decided my lunch became, I'd come in and I'd have a big old eggs and ground beef and potato breakfast that would have to last me about 14 hours. And in between I would eat jelly beans, and I would have milkshakes. And the whey would coat the throat. So that I would liken it to the difference between an exhaust pipe with holes in it and a brand new one. So it's kind of, it helped me get that throatiness.
Which leads me into the next question. Here we go. In many of your films, you have great many accents. But you're an alumni of Georgetown University, where you honed your skills of the study of languages. Is that true?
No.
Okay.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
IMDb failed me again.
No. It's absolutely true. I was at school, and funny thing, and this will come around. This little story will come around. So my father was hoping that I would be a professor of languages and linguistics. I wrote a treatise. At that time I was transferring from the University of Barcelona. Mom was with the State Department, so I lived in Barcelona for 5 years. Beautiful place up the coast. And I wrote a treatise on Chaucer, on the Canterbury Tales, and sort of borrowed words, borrowed language. And by virtue of that, and with great help from, and I'll never forget her kindness, Mimi Tracy, who was the heiress to General Motors. Her pop was an engineer who basically kept the company alive back in the 20s. And she, I was teaching her Spanish. She would stay at the Ritz Hotel. I was lucky enough to go to the hotel, and she would say, "Oh, this is my friend Claudio Arau, and he's there playing piano and classical." And I'm looking around, and certainly a place that I felt like a fish out of water. But I was so lucky to be introduced to that sort of really uber elegant life that I still can only dream about. But I do remember that she read the paper as well and was enthused and wrote an introduction to Georgetown for me. I got accepted. So this was a very abstract thing that I had written. Now fast forward again to being in class and having language broken down into goodness, algebra, geometry, just equations, and pretty soon I was left in the dust. So although that says I'm an alumni, I actually I told you the story about my pop and coming out and helping him. That was when I took my hiatus, and it took me a while to tell my father that I wasn't going back. Wasn't going to go back to school, that basically I couldn't cut it. And so he, you'll forgive my French, no kids in here, he got effing pissed off. and more so when I told him, he says, "Well, what are you going to do with your life? You're going to stay with a limo? You're going to be a limo driver?" And I said, "Well, yeah, for now, that's what I'm going to do, but I'm taking acting classes." And he said, "Oh, that makes it better." And so ouch. I showed him my first acting gig. I showed it to him on tape, and I'll never forget. He looked at me, I looked back at the TV, and he said, "Is that it?" And I thought, okay, this is a tough sell. So it was a while, and we kind of we would talk every couple of weeks, but I knew that I would sort of keep him apprised of what I was doing, how the career was moving along. But I do remember I invited him to the premiere of Toy Soldiers, which would have been merely 3-4 years from that point. Now, mind you, he had been on the set of another 48 Hours, which had come out before. And I was always kind of proud to. My father was a martial artist, so I was proud to show him. So I did the fight, and actually I insisted that I be the one that get kicked. So Eddie Murphy kicks me out a window, and I fall into a water truck. But I did the kick out the window, and the stunt guy, Eddie's stunt guy, Greg Elam, they called him the Prince. This guy was an amazing stuntman. And he was the stunt coordinator for Walker, Texas Ranger, later on. He told me, okay, I'm gonna kick you right here. You're gonna feel it, don't flinch. It's gonna take you, believe me. And I said, you're gonna knock me through the window? He says, I will knock you through the window. I said, okay. And my father was there watching, and he was very enthused, and that was nice, and he thought, well, great. But when I invited him to the premiere of Toy Soldiers, I remember at the end of the movie, I stood up, was ready to go outside. I was really new at this whole thing of the crowd and talking to the press, hadn't the faintest idea what to say. But I do remember after the movie, I stood up, people turned around and they clapped. I was sitting in the back. And so my father tugged on my jacket and said, I'll wait for you outside. And I'll never forget the look on his face when I came out. It's as if, the look in his eyes as he was looking at me, it was as if it was a son that he didn't understand or he didn't know, but he had much admiration for. So I'll never forget that fact. And because of that, Toy Soldiers is one of my favorite movies.
Now back to the languages. How many of them do you still currently speak?
I speak 8. I used to speak 9, but I forgot one. I was going to do, and I did in fact do a movie. I did Oblivion 1 and 2 in Romania. I knew I was going to be in Romania for about 4 or 5 months. And so I decided, I bought a Berlitz book at that time. That was the king of languages, language learning. And I started learning the language before I got there. By the time I had gotten there, I could find a bathroom, order my food, do just sort of the pleasantries of the language. And then by the time I left, I was doing interviews for the local radio stations and the newspapers in Romania. And then coming back to the States, maybe 15 years later, I was at. I like to support, as we all do, and we all should. We like to support our local community, and so I was at the high school doing talking to the kids in the gym and so forth. And some kid raises his hand, and I said, he stood up and asked me a question in Romanian. And I answered in Romanian what I thought he was saying, and then he says, and the person with the mic is about to walk away. He grabs the mic and says, "That's not what I asked you." And I thought, oh boy, here we go, busted by a 90. So that very night, I went home and took that language off the resume, and so I never would have believed. I love language. I love being a polyglot. And you never would have been able to convince me that you can actually forget a language. And so in those few years, 10, 15 years, blink of an eye, I had forgotten the language, and I sat at home stunned. I was just like, holy crap. And I had no reason to be so stunned, because I wasn't keeping it up. I had nobody to speak with. And so I figured, well, it's going to stay in there. It's archived. But my hard drive was, shall we say, not what I thought it was. So 8 languages, yes.
No.
He spoke French beautifully, apparently, and so I believe it was Franklin who commented to him that, when you were speaking, I didn't recognize the Thomas that I know. And his answer to that was, you are as many different people as the languages that you speak. And so not only speaking the language, but imbuing that language with the culture from that people. And I carry that with me. And so my answer to being typecast as a bad guy is I get to, as you say, all these accents, all these different languages, I get to, again, yet another layer to paint on a character, another layer which I can hide behind. And so it just convinced me that all of this just makes for the character, just allows me to hide a little more and to be less Andrew and more the character, more Boris, more Ernesto, more whomever I'm playing. But I am so thankful that I obsessed on the languages as a kid. I did so coming to the States, 10 years old. Long story short, I had an accent, and I was razzed by kids. Kids can be, as we all know, they can be the worst bullies. Not physical, but the things that are said, and so they can be the sharpest pains. And so as a kid, I obsessed on languages, and thankfully I now speak 8. And the guy so when I came to the States, I had an interview with the principal of the school I was to attend. And my mom was in the room, and so he asked me a couple of questions. And he said, I remember he asked me, he says, do you play baseball? Do you like baseball? And I said, yeah. I said, well, what position do you play? I said, batter. I want to be a batter. And he said, and he looked at my mom and he said, you know what, I think we're going to make them repeat the 4th grade. And so that stigmatized me as well, but it just forced me to obsess on languages. I don't know where that gentleman is now, but I do know that I speak English fairly better than then, plus another 7. So, screw him.
We got a good applause for Toy Soldiers earlier. Is there any good memories, good stories that can come from that? Because it looked like you put the fear of God into these kids who are now, still growing and still doing their thing. Was there anything that you can, give us that little details or anything that got you into that character, or basically, if you know how some people are parted away from everybody, was there anything?
That's a good question, and you've outlined it well. And indeed, I chose to. Usually, I'm very gregarious on a set. I'm not what you would call a method actor. I do my work. I study hard. I make sure I have my notes. I do my background. There are times when it's good to be gregarious, and there are times when it's not. And I felt that so the kids would go out to dinner, Sean, Will, all the kids, they'd go out to dinner and would invite me, and I said, I just didn't want there to be that sort of, I don't know, friendliness, if you will, between the kids and myself. I wanted them to have the fear of God when Reese was on the set. I wanted the kids at home watching it to believe what they were seeing, to make sure that even the kids, and there was a time, and I went over to Mr. Petrie, Daniel Petrie, and I said, Dan, I had done the scene, and it was when he's in the room, and he says to the young kid, and I'm trying to, was it Manuel? He says, do you speak Spanish, Manuel? And the kid says, no, I don't speak Spanish. And I say, sácalo pa' fuera y métele un balazo, which means take him outside and put a bullet. So in that scene, I wasn't getting the fear, and so I approached Mr. Petrie and I said, sir, I'm very cordial on the set. It's always sir. I said, I'm not getting the fear. I said, would you mind leaving the room and giving me 10 minutes with the kids? And he said, he looked at me and he looked at the kids and as if it's the last goodbye, and left the room, and then I did. I put the fear of God into them, and I did it all in Spanish, and they didn't know what the hell I was saying, but they didn't want to know. So from then on, it was quite wonderful. I must say, Lou Gossett was what a beautiful human, what a beautiful thing it was to work with him. And he had a lot of times, you'll get the so-called A-listers who will talk about being a part. As soon as they're done with their work, back to the trailer. Well, Lou wasn't that type of person, that type of actor, and he was generous, and he would say, that was wonderful. It felt great. So it was absolutely wonderful working with him. I remember, let's see, one of the one of the things about there was a local kid from Virginia who came on as an extra, and whose role as one of the kids got evolved, and that was really wonderful. He came in right about the time that that Arlie Ermey came in, and the hostage and rescue guys. Now these were the actual guys from down the road. We filmed in Washington D.C., in and around Virginia, Charlottesville, and the guys from Quantico came up, and this would have been late '91, maybe early. No, it would have been late 90, going into '91. And you'll remember that there was this skirmish, this thing called Desert War. Now these guys were all the HRT guys from Quantico, and I was told one time I had been out. We would hit the hotel bar and tell stories and listen to Arlie Ermey, who had some fantastic stories. And I remember we weren't supposed to shoot the scene with the helicopters coming in until, say, 2 weeks down the road, but I would knock on the door late at night, 11 o'clock. The assistant director says, "We're filming that tomorrow." I said, "What?" "We're filming that tomorrow, so get with the dial." And so I did. Turns out that all these guys were called off. They had to get on camera and get the heck on over to Iraq, because they were all called into Desert War. So Desert Storm, forgive me. And so just that brief camaraderie was so wonderful, and I had a chance when we were drinking. They said I was asking questions about them basically rappelling out of a helicopter, and I said, "Well, that must be so cool." And they looked at me and they go, "You want to do it?" And I go, "Yeah, I want to do it." Somehow Mr. Petrie got wind of it, and they came to me and they said, we can't do the helicopter." I said, they could tell I was bummed out, because I like doing that stuff. I started out as a stuntman, but they said, "But we can teach you the Australian crawl on that building over there." And I thought, how cool is that? Literally walking down a building with it was so cool to get taught that by those guys, and so I have wonderful memories from that. So thank you.
Oh, that's perfect. Now, keeping in stunts, all right, like he said, as starting as a stuntman, was there any big stunts that you did of your own, and did you ever get hurt from any film, any?
Yeah, I got hurt a few times, but that was my own stupidity, my own sort of eagerness to do things without policing the area. One thing a good stunt coordinator will tell you: make sure you know your area. If you're going to have a fight here, you're going to be falling on the ground. Police your area. Make sure there's no sharp glass, no rocks, no nails on the ground, and so forth. I remember most recently, I guess this would have been about 10 plus years ago, on CSI Miami, when Mr. Caruso, who was wonderful to work with, he kills me. He kills my character, and Ivan Sarno. And I remember they said, "Are you okay to hit the ground?" And I looked, "We're going to put a pad down there." I said, "Yeah, sure, no problem." So I was going to kick out and then, tuck my chin in and hit the ground. And then they came to me and said, "Well, we're not going to do the pad because we can see it. Are you still good to go to the ground?" I said, "Yeah, let's do it." So suffice to say, I kick up and I hit that asphalt, and my head cracked back, and I'm bleeding profusely, and all I can think about is, because this character, and he did, thankfully, he did, with 6 or 7 episodes, and I'm thinking, oh man, they're going to be pissed off. So David Caruso came over. He said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah." And the stunt coordinator says to me, he says, "I've never seen anybody hit their head harder than that. He says, how many fingers? Are you good? Everything good?" And I said, "Yeah, we're good to go." But I must say, I think for me, as an actor, being able to do that, just like languages with the character, being able to do the physicality is also, for me, it was always part of the character.
Mm-hmm. So you take a fall if they said, "Hey,
absolutely,
you're going to fall into the..." Yeah, okay.
And by the way, I got to, they gave me that for another 48 hours. They gave me that motorcycle 6 months before we started filming. Not gave it, we said, ride it for 6 months, learn how to use it. So that was my transport for 6 months in California before the helmet law. So that was, so first of all, are you an agent, sir? Okay. You should be. You should be. I seldom know when to keep my mouth shut. Certainly at that time. So when I was told I got the role, I said to myself, keep your mouth shut, do the job, show that you show up on time, don't trip with furniture, as Spencer Tracy said. I never thought I was happiest actually at the hotel. I'm kind of still a sloppy kid. I don't clean my room, so it was kind of nice to leave. And wow, I come back, my room's clean. But just being in Hawaii, what a cool vibe. And I must say, the Hawaiian people were really an unseen character of the show, because it was that sort of, I don't know, that chill attitude, that beautiful respect for the ocean and for their jungles that really comes across, I think, in the show itself. It was, can you imagine? I mean, I was there for, to answer your question, I guess a total of about 6 months. And I would come in, I'd often stay for about 5 weeks and then go. If you know the show, you'll know that it starts with Mikhail stepping up into and looking into the frame with that patch on his eye. And I thought, I did that. They put me on a plane, and before they did, they said, "You'll be back." And I said, "Yeah, right." I've heard that before. But nothing but that was, for me, it was a life changer. Truly was. Being in Hawaii, being able to work, being paid to be in this paradise. Now, but mind you, the days were long. They were 18-hour days, some of them, because we were deep in the jungle. I remember getting home, and some of my neighbors would say, "Well, what part of which island were you on?" And I said, "Oahu." And they said, "Oh, that's so full of concrete and buildings and all of that." And I said, "You know what? Go spend 18 hours in a jungle. You're going to be looking for sidewalks and places, concrete and buildings." But nothing but beautiful memories. Stephen Williams was the first director. My favorite episode is Enter 77 with Curly the Bull. That was his name. Thank you.
Thank you. Question? Hey.
Working on close character. Is there any collaboration with the creator of the comic, original source material?
It really was more writer and director. I didn't have the chance to meet Mr. Quinn and Mr. Bridget. We spoke, we traded messages, but didn't have a chance to meet them or happen. But they actually, as Brian Usna told me, they preferred to let me do my interpretation of the character. Again, what a wonderful thing it was to have lived in Barcelona for those 5 years and then go back to film in Barcelona and be able to invite my friends. So when I was at the University of Pedralbes in Barcelona, I remember all of the young students saying, "Yeah, man, you got to go up the coast. There's Swedish girls up there, and the beaches are beautiful." And so that's what we do. In the summer, we go up there and work. So in the summers, I was renting paddle boats and sleeping on the beach. That was really very cool. But how beautiful was it for me to then, this would have been maybe 12 years later, to come back and be able to invite my friends down to the set and have them see. Because even at that time, I said, "You know what, I think I want to be an actor." And they looked at me and they go, "Oh, here goes Andy again, crazy dude." But it was so fulfilling for me to have them come down to the set and just be part of it. I hope I've answered your question.
That was a pretty good answer, I think. That gentleman with his hand up right there.
Yep. I was just curious, with how many horror franchises are getting one of those direct reboot continuations, would you ever consider returning to play the Djinn?
Absolutely.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, I wrote the third, what I thought would be the third film in the series, and presented it to, at that time it was Andrew Divoff. It was Artisan Pictures, who later were bought by Lionsgate, of course. And so what I had done is I had increased the special effects. But it was obvious after a couple of conversations with them that they wanted to go the other way, take money away from the specialness of the special effects that I thought, you know, helped make this such a beautiful movie. I mean all of these specials, granted, computer generation was in its infancy then, and some of that stuff is kind of hokey. But for instance, in the third issue, it starts out, we had written it as a party at the United Nations, and although that building has no gargoyles, in my script, it did. And of course, the gargoyles, as the party's going on, they wake up and they start crawling down the building.
Oh.
They come inside the party, and of course, they have some fun.
Nice, nice.
They wreck some Shiat. I don't mind the idea of a reboot. I honestly don't. And somebody asked me, I was just in Sheffield, England, and they said if there was to be another Wishmaster movie, and if it wasn't to be you, do you have an idea of who might play it? And I couldn't remember the young actor's name, but there is an actor who I think could kick its ass, and his name is Colin Morgan. He played, do you know him?
Colin Morgan from BBC's Merlin.
Merlin. Oh, what an absolute, because he has that charmingness, but then at the same time, he in the flash in a second, he can turn, and the eyes, and so I thought, that's the guy.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I would love to see it have a continued life, and if I could participate in it as well, I would, of course, be in seventh heaven. Question: is there an eighth heaven? Do you know? Anybody? Are there only 7? Miss, I know, I saw your arm.
Yeah,
Don't
I
say
was going to say, she had it up earlier, now she's not doing anything about it.